I'm ready now. I love my piano player. I couldn't do it without her. All right. Let us pray. Oh, gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for this time we've come to study your word. Lord, these are these difficult texts, but they're so amazing because it shows your sovereignty, your plan, your control of history. Lord, these are events that also prefigure what's going to happen at the end of time. We can watch this happen where if we just paid attention with our eyes, it looked like we would lose, but in the end you've got a plan to give us the victory. We have to trust in you and cling to your promises, Lord, and this is what this is teaching us. It's showing us, Lord, that the outer circumstances don't always seem like they're going our way, but the eternal victory has been promised to us because you are in control. Lord, I ask this be a time that I be able to teach this in a clear, concise way. It's going to take you, Holy Spirit, bring it back to my memory, the things that I've studied, and it's going to take you illuminating those that are here and allowing them to learn, allowing them to enjoy this time to watch you unfold your plan. Lord, this is a lot of history, but this is still your word, and it's showing you're in control. So as your people, I ask for your blessing. It's going to take you and you alone. For your name we pray, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
And we are in Daniel 11. Like I said, initially I was just going to get all hardcore on you with Antiochus III and Antiochus IV. But I felt like after praying about it, that'd be dumb of me. I felt like the second go around with Daniel 11, you did great. And it was totally the Holy Spirit, but the way it was taught was just much more abbreviated. And it just covered things that I've gone over before, and y'all begin to recognize it. And I feel like it flowed. I feel like everybody got something from it, and you got to watch this unfold. And that is the important thing you're learning. So instead of me jumping ahead, since all of you hadn't got here yet, and it's so important for you to see, this is God predicting these things, we're just basically going to start Daniel 11 over and just move through it quicker. Okay? And if you've already seen it, make sure you know what we're talking about by this point. I mean, there's a couple of you in here. If I were able to look at this point, you should be able to answer the question for me. And if you're not there yet, say, why not? Can I get there? How can I get there? Okay? So keep all that in mind. Little stuff you need to know going into it. We are in Daniel 11. So that puts the year at what? We're doing the Persian Empire. We've already seen in Daniel 10, this is the third year of Cyrus. So this is going to put us, if Persia beats Babylon at 539, and we count down, 3 years later, it's going to put us roughly at what?
536.
Very good. 536, 535, around this range, depending upon what time frame we're using. Very good, okay? So everything we're going to see in Daniel 11 hasn't happened yet. It's predicted. We can go back and read it as history. But when Daniel is letting us know about this, from his perspective, it has not happened yet. For the details to be this accurate shows it has to have divine insight. Keep all that in mind when we're going over this. We're going to go over this, and you're like, why are we taking a history class? We're not. We're taking a prophecy class. And we're watching prophecy unfold. Okay? Keep that in mind. Number two, where's he getting this information from? Who's telling him all this?
God.
Well, yes, but who's the direct person in front of him at this point in time? The heavenly messenger, probably Gabriel. Okay? All from Daniel 10. This is Gabriel. Remember, go back and read Daniel 10. You want to see more of that. Whereas Daniel 10 shows us the spiritual powers that shape world history, Daniel 11 will show us the outworking of history from the earthly perspective. Keep that in mind. We're going to see a lot of wars take place. In particular, we're going to watch the Greek Empire, a lot of it, and what goes on after Alexander. That's going to be a lot of your keys here, okay? And remember, we're rushing to a figure called Antiochus IV. He's the ancient Near Eastern Hitler. He persecuted the Jews. He tried to Hellenize them. He tried to institute false religion. And anything that was truly of Yahweh, he persecuted. That is going to prefigure and foreshadow the Antichrist. This is why in verse 36, it can cut right over from Antiochus IV to the Antichrist. Probably with either telescoping prophecy or double fulfillment. We'll wait to get to that. But just keep all that in mind, okay? That's key to that. All right, in the midst of all this, keep Daniel 7 in mind. Remember the apocalyptic beast out of the sea? And we saw 4 major empires. What were the 4 major empires? Starting with Babylon, who comes next?
Persia.
Medo-Persia. After Medo-Persia, who comes next?
Greeks.
The Greeks. After the Greeks, who comes next?
Romans.
And the Romans were what? Robo-beasts. Robo-beast, right? Now, we hadn't seen Robo-beast on the scene. Robo-beast is about to come on the scene. So if these guys would have just read Daniel to begin with, they'd have known they were beaten by the Romans and couldn't go to battle with them. But they didn't do that, okay? So we're definitely going to see Robo-beast come onto the scene, and he is going to be the great brick wall to Antiochus III and Antiochus IV. It's going to be huge. God's predicting all this, okay? So keep all that in mind. That is where we are. And we're going to see repeating this again in Daniel 11 is what Daniel's going to do. He's going to start out with the empire that he is in, and he's going to predict what happens to them, and then predict which empire comes next and what's going to happen to them. This is all prediction. And look how accurate it's going to be. So start with Daniel 11, verse 2. Remember, verse 1, Daniel 11:1 connects back to Daniel 10, but Daniel 11:2 starts the vision itself. Okay? So read Daniel 11:2 for us, Jacynda.
And now I will show you the truth. Behold, 3 more kings shall arise in Persia, and a 4th shall be far richer than all of them. And when he has become strong through his riches, he shall stir up all against the kingdom of Greece.
All right, in Daniel 11:2, we get told straight up, what empire are we talking about here? No, not yet. Persia. We're talking about Persia. By this time, Cyrus the Great has beaten his grandfather Median and taken over. He's taken over the whole empire and connected them with the Persians are in control. Okay, keep all that in mind at this point in time. And so what happens here, what we're going to see is a prediction of 4 kings are going to take place. One of them is going to become really rich, and he's going to have wars with Greece. This is going to be important, okay? The 4th king will be Xerxes. Why is this important? Because Xerxes will be the second battle maneuver against Greece that inevitably leads Alexander to come conquer the the whole empire that's against them. The Greeks will conquer them because of this, okay? Now remember, there are 4 major kings in the Persian Empire. That's what this is talking about. Do you remember who the 4 major kings are we've already mentioned before? Anybody want to guess? Who's the first major Persian ruler? I just said them. Who's in control right now during Daniel's time?
Darius.
Good guess, but no. Cyrus. Cyrus the Great. Who is Cyrus' son? No, but good guess. Cambyses. Remember, Cambyses comes next. You got 4 of these guys here. Who comes next? You just said it. What'd you say, Gene?
Darius.
Yes, Darius the first, the true Darius, okay? And after this will be Xerxes. It's possible you throw in pseudo-Smyrtus in here. It doesn't matter. You're looking at these major rulers and what it's talking about. You want to get to Xerxes because the Persians attacked the Greeks twice. Darius the first does it before 90 BC, and then he loses. So his son, Xerxes, wants get some face back, so he attacks him. And guess what? In the end, he loses as well. Okay? Just keep all that in mind. The first one in 490 is the Battle of Marathon. That's where they lose. The second one is at Thermopylae at Salamis Bay. The movie 300. Keep that in mind, okay? That's predicting the movie 300 is what this is doing, okay? So we've seen the Persians right here, and we've seen what's going to happen with them. Now, after the Persians are going to come what empire? Who comes next? Who's going to be the Persians?
Greece.
The Greeks. So who do you think we're about to see a prophecy about? Who's the major leader of the Greeks, Dennis? Alexander the Great. So do you think we're going to see a prophecy about Alexander the Great coming next? Yes. Yes. Keep this in mind. Daniel was predicting all this. Remember, Xerxes is the one who's going to set off a chain of events that is going to cause Alexander to rise up and beat the Medo-Persian Empire. Okay? That 4th king who had riches, Xerxes, who came against the Greeks, Xerxes. He's the one that's going to cause Alexander, Xerxes, to come and defeat them. Okay? So we should see, if Daniel knows what he's talking about from God, and if God can predict the future, we should see a prophecy about Alexander the Great comes next. Okay? So let's read verse 3.
Then a mighty king shall arise, who shall rule with great dominion and do as he wills.
What did Alexander the Great do? Anything he wanted to. He beat everybody. And he came in with speed, the Greek blitzkrieg, okay? And he comes in and he conquers the whole known major world in 10 years, including the Medo-Persians, okay? And then in 323, he dies mysteriously. Ironically, in the city of Babylon, okay? So let's see. Now, we already know. What happens to his empire? Does his son get his empire? No. Either one of his sons? No. Does his brother get his empire? No. Who gets his empire?
The 4 generals.
So we better see a prophecy if God knows what he's talking about what? 4 generals. Or 4 people who aren't related to Alexander some way or another in this next prophecy. If God can't do that, then he can't tell the future. But if God can, he knows the future. So let's see if God knows the future or not. Verse 4. Read that for us, Jacynda.
And as soon as he has arisen, his kingdom shall be broken and divided toward the 4 winds of heaven, but not to his posterity, nor according to the authority of which he ruled. For his kingdom shall be plucked up and go to others besides these.
Well, okay. His kingdom is going to be broken into the 4, what? 4 winds. 4. Okay? Alexander's generals, the Diadochi, the successors, in the end there were how many of them? Four. We started more than that, we went with 4. So God's predicting that. Not to his posterity, which means not to Alexander's brothers, not to his sons, not to his family. Did Alexander's sons or his family or anyone else? No. They go to his generals, as we just said, okay? So keep that in mind. The Diadochi, anybody remember their names? The 4 major ones I want you to worry about. Because that's who we end up with 4 anyway. You're going to have like a couple at first, counting Antigonus, the one-eye, but you need to know the major 4. Lysimachus is over Thrace. Cassander is over Macedonia and Greece. Now these 2 next ones you need to know. Who's over Egypt? Ptolemy. And who's over Mesopotamia, Syria? Seleucus. Okay? They're going to be huge. You need to know all these guys, okay? Because what happens, it's inevitably going to be these last 2, Egypt and Syria, are going to start these 6 Syrian wars we're about to read all about. Why in the world would God give us a bunch of information about a war between Syria and Egypt, run by the Greeks? Why in the world would he do that? Because who's right in the middle of all of that? What little land territory is right in the middle of all that?
Israel.
Palestine. So we're going to watch what happens to Palestine between the Old and New Testaments. That's what this is looking at. And it's rushing towards this Antichrist figure named Antiochus IV, who truly is an Antichrist figure. He, a matter of fact, is the little whore from Daniel 8, where the Antichrist is the little whore from Daniel 7. They mimic, they match each other. You want to watch the career of the Antichrist, study the career of Antiochus IV, and you will see characteristics that match up perfectly. Okay, that's what this is doing. All right, so what we're going to see here is verse 5 technically starts it, but not to confuse you, technically do this in verse 6. On this period right here, this is that little code I taught you. Anytime you see the king of the south, what nation do you need to plug in? Egypt. Egypt, remember that. Or if you really want to get smart, the Ptolemaic Empire. That's all you need to know. Anytime you see the king of the south from now on, just say Egypt or Ptolemaic Empire. Okay? Anytime you see king of the north from now on out, just say Syria or Seleucid Empire. For those of you that really want to get good grades in here. Okay? You're just going to plug this in. You're going to plug in king of the south, Egypt, king of the north, Syria, and you're going to watch these guys go to war. Okay? It does start at 5, but 5 is a little more confusing, so if you really want to make that just easily plug in, start it at verse 6. Verse 5 is always a little confusing. After that, it's going to flow on through for you, okay? All right, let's see here. Let's read verse 5, because the background of verse 5, I'll kind of tell you before it even happens, is the Diadochi, the successors. There's going to be about 5 of them at this point, okay, before there becomes 4. Antigonus, the one-eye. Why do they call him the one-eye? He only got one eye, okay? He wants to take over Alexander's empire. And he gets successful at first, and he comes down, and he takes Mesopotamia, and he goes over, and he takes some Babylon regions, and he comes over, and he takes the Seleucid region of that empire. Well, the Seleucid general runs down to Egypt, and he basically becomes friends with the Ptolemaic Empire at this point. So at this point, they are friends. And what's going to happen is, you're going to have 2 wars you need to know about. The Battle of Gaza in 312, where they defeat Antigonus, and what's going to happen is the Seleucids get the empire back, and the Battle of Ipsus in 301, where Antigonus is defeated and killed, okay? And then Palestine is given over to the Seleucid Empire, which makes the Ptolemaic Empire very mad, and they go to war in the 6 Syrian wars, okay? Keep that in mind. You got all that? You got all that, right? So I can go back and ask you about all of them. Got it. I will try to repeat it real quick after this. All you need to know is this is going to set up for what's going to happen next in the 6 Syrian wars, is all this is doing, okay? So read verse 5 for us, Jacynda.
Then the king of the south shall be strong, but one of his princes shall be stronger than he, and shall rule, and his authority shall be a great authority.
This is the only one's a little confusing. Okay. King of the south, what nation are we talking about?
Egypt.
Egypt, okay? Only thing confusing about this is, at this point, the guys from the kings of the north are working with the kings of the south. And this prince he's talking about is a guy from the king of the north who's going to rise up and become more powerful than him eventually. You got all that? Is that breaking down pretty easy? That's all you need to know, okay? And what this is going to, and by the way, that's Ptolemy the First. That's the guy you remember, the Colossus of Rhodes, 7 wonders of the world. That's that guy, okay? So that's him. So keep all that in mind. After Antigonus is ousted and defeated in Ipsus in 301 and killed, although Ptolemy sends in large numbers of troops, although he let Seleucus get back his territory, he wasn't there in the battle itself. So when they divided Antigonus the One-Eye or Cyclops' territory up, they give it to Seleucid Empire. Well, guess what? The Ptolemaic Egyptians do not want to give it up, and we're going to fight over it, and this starts this war. Okay? Just keep that in mind. Really simple. Now, verse 6 itself. This is that neat little marriage treaty. You remember this marriage treaty? Remember how this happens here? How we're going to make a political marriage treaty. We're going to marry the king of the north and the king of the south. They're going to put two people together, and they're going to come together in a political marriage alliance. Right? Okay? Now, do these things normally work out? Not with these people. Put it that way, okay? And we will see how all this works out. This is going to be huge. What it's going to do is briefly cover how this is going to end the first and second Syrian wars. Daniel is predicting all this. Okay? Keep this in mind. Read for us verse 6.
After some years they shall make an alliance, and the daughter of the king of the south shall come to the king of the north to make an agreement. But she shall not retain the strength of her arm, and he in his arm shall not endure. But she shall be given up in her attendance, he who fathered her, and he who has supported her in those times.
Okay, now, this is talking about the political treaty marriage of 250 that ends the first two Syrian wars. What you need to know here, we got the king of the south. What area is this?
Egypt.
What empire? The Ptolemaic. Okay, so what we're going to have here is Ptolemaic Philadelphus. Why is he called Philadelphus? Anybody remember Greek? Go look back at Terry. Go remember Greek?
Brotherly love.
Philadelphus. Okay, we got love.
City of brotherly love.
Very close. Very close. Now take love and brother and put it together, and you got brother lover. Okay? Why is he called a brother lover? He didn't love his brother, but he did love his sister. So he's called a brother lover because he married his sister. Very good, by the way. You passed that one. So he married his sister. So this is Ptolemy II, brother lover, or city of brotherly love is what Philadelphia means. Very good. And so we got this. He marries incestual relations. Well, what's going to happen at this point is he's going to send his daughter Berenice to marry the king of the north. You getting this, Willis? To marry the king of the north. Antiochus II Theos. What does Theos mean in Greek? God. So this guy considers himself a god, or they consider him a god for some of his war victories. So he's going to marry. The problem is Antiochus II is already married. Okay? He's already married to this woman named Laodice. All right? Well, we're going to make a political marriage. This is going to work out. So what's he do? He divorces Laodice. He brings in Berenice. They have a kid. Things are going great, right? No, apparently something doesn't go great because Antiochus II decides he wants Laodice back. Okay? So what he does is he divorces Berenice. And he says, you get out, we get divorced. Well, Laodice comes back, and she goes, sure, we can get back together. And what does she do? She kills everybody. She kills all of them. She kills Berenice, the heir to the throne, and Antiochus because he divorced her. How dare you? No, you're not going to do that to me. Don't spurn this woman. She is mean, and she will kill you, and she does. Okay? So she comes in, things don't work out. She kills everybody. And her son, Seleucus II, this is huge now. Although he's a kid, he becomes the rightful heir. But he's just a kid, so who does that make the queen for a little while? Her. So she is the queen for a little while. Why is Seleucus II even important? He will become the grandfather of Antiochus IV, the guy who will persecute the Jews. Remember, we're walking things down to see how Antiochus IV gets power, how this ancient Near Eastern Hitler rises, how this precursor to the Antichrist gets power himself. This is so important, okay? Because at this point, his grandfather is born. His grandfather should be killed in the next verse, but does not get killed. This is what's crazy about this, okay? Keep all this in mind. So, while Dicey's in power, she's killed everybody. Well, if you break a political marriage like this, what does that happen to the home front you had the agreement with?
Oh, they get mad.
Oh, they get really, really mad, okay? So what's going to happen is her brother is going to react. Her brother's going to react, and he's going to come in, and he's going to slaughter everybody. Okay? He ain't going to have it. You're not going to disrespect my family this way. You're not going to do it to my sister. How dare you break this political agreement? We will show you what the Ptolemaic Empire does if you come against us, if you trifle with us, and if you betray us. We're going to make an example of you. So here's what happens in verse 7 through 8. The brother retaliates. The third Syrian war. Here's what happens here. Verse 7 through 8. Go ahead.
And from a branch from her roots one shall arise in his place. He shall come against the army and enter the fortress of the king of the north. And he shall deal with them and shall prevail. He shall also carry off to Egypt their gods with their metal images and their precious vessels of silver and gold, and for some years he shall refrain from attacking the king of the north.
Okay, all this is talking about is what's going to happen is the king of the south, this is going to be her brother Ptolemy III, the benefactor, is going to come in and defeat everybody. He is going to do what's called god napping. He's going to take the Syrian gods and he's going to take the Egyptian gods that the Persians with Cambyses had taken up there, okay? Because remember, the Persians had beat the Egyptians a while back. So what's going to happen is he's going to go back, he's going to get all the Egyptian gods, he's going to take them home, he's going to beat everybody. If you take somebody's gods in the ancient Near East, you've humiliated them. Because what you've done is you made them powerless. And you made it look like their gods have forsaken them, or your gods are stronger than their gods. And if our gods are stronger than your gods, you can't beat us in victory. We've just humiliated you. This is a kind of spit in your face type deal. All this is. This is, how dare you, I'm spitting in your face. You've broken this political alliance, I'm spitting in your face. That's what this is, okay? So, he comes in and he kills everybody except for one person. Seleucus II, the grandfather of Antiochus IV. The only one to make it. Everyone else gets killed. All the gods get taken. They get pillaged, rumbled against, captive. Everything happens except this one child makes it through, who will inevitably become the grandfather of the ancient Near Eastern Hitler, okay? Shouldn't he be dead at this point? No, God's got a plan. God's already predicted that's not how it's going to happen. On the surface, it seemed like it's going to happen. On the surface, there's no explanation. But God said it wasn't going to happen, so guess what? It didn't happen. And that's all you can say about that, okay? So he survives. Laodicea's killed. Everyone else is killed, but he survives. And then in verse 9, all verse 9 really is him coming of age and him going back and retaking the territory. He attempts to invade Egypt, but decides to turn around, doesn't do anything. It's a very boring verse. It's just part of the process to let you know he lived, and that's all it's really letting you know. So verse 9, read that for us.
Then the latter shall come into the realm of the king of the south, but shall return to his own land.
Okay, all this is Lucas II going down and retaking the lost territory, verse 7 through 8. So now we're right back where we started. The Egyptians, they got their territory. The Syrians, Seleucus, they got their territory. Kind of right back where we started. Okay, so what's the point of all this? Well, now we're getting to another very important ruler called Antiochus III. He will not only be the father of Antiochus IV, he will become Antiochus the Great. There are only Antiochus Megas. There are only two other greats up to this point, and what they do, they pretty much ruled the world. Okay, who was it? Cyrus and Alexander. Well, this guy is going to be the closest thing to the Greek Alexander there is. He's going to take over a lot of territory, and he would have taken over the world except for one little startup empire that he ran into that God predicted back in Daniel 7. At this point, he should take over the world. He is on a rampage to take over the world. But who comes to the picture? Robo-Beast, Rome, just like God predicted. And it's not a fair fight. I mean, when Antiochus goes on in there, he's got about 70,000 troops. Rome's got about 30,000 troops. But who wins? Rome. We're going to see how this works out, okay? Keep all that in mind. All right, so verse 10, the rise of Antiochus III, Antiochus the Great. We're going to be dealing with him from verse 10 through 19. Read verse 10 for us.
His sons shall wage war and assemble a multitude of great forces, which shall keep coming and overflow and pass through, and again shall carry the war as far as his fortress.
Okay. His sons, that's the son of Seleucus II, the child who should have died who didn't. Okay? He's got two sons. One of his sons, Seleucus III, has the name Thunder or Thunderbolt, which is making fun of his ability not to be able to win wars. Okay? They're ironic, they hate him. If you're a leader and you don't win wars, what happens to you? You get killed eventually, real quick, okay? So he's not winning wars. He gets ousted. But his little brother, Antiochus III, comes to power, and he inevitably is going to have a great career, okay? We're going to see what happens. He's going to continue the wars that happen, but it doesn't start out that way. What happens, we're going to see in verse 11 through 12, is going to be the Battle of Raphia. Daniel's predicting the Battle of Raphia in 217 BC. He's predicting this. Keep this in mind. At the Battle of Raphia, now keep all this in mind. When you beat one major empire, you normally chase after them and do what? Kill them. Wipe them off. Don't give them a second chance. So all practical military strategic purposes, this should be the end of Antiochus III, which should be the end of Antiochus IV, where he comes to power. But although Antiochus III is going to lose this battle, does he die? No. Because he's going to go against the king of Egypt, Ptolemy IV, who worships Bacchus or Dionysus and loves to what?
Party.
Party. Very good. We'll put it that way. Okay, he loves to party. He loves to party. So instead of pursuing after him and conquering him, he's going to turn on back around and have a great banquet. Have a great feast. Hey, we beat them. Why pursue them when I can go find some wine and women? That's going to be his mentality here. Keep this in mind, okay? So verse 11 and 12, the battle of Raphia is predicted. Read this for us.
Then the king of the south, moved with rage, shall come out and fight against the kingdom of the north. And he shall raise a great multitude, but it shall be given into his hand. And when the multitude is taken away, his heart shall be exalted. And he shall cast down tens of thousands, but he shall not prevail.
Okay, the king of the south. What nation is this going to be? Egypt. What empire? The Ptolemaic Empire. This is Ptolemy the Fourth, Philopater. We want to guess the Greek on that one. Philo, lover, pater, father. Very good back there. Good job. Father lover, because he was a daddy's boy. He's Esau. He's like that mentality, okay? Loved his daddy. But he loved to party even more. So keep that in mind. The king of the north is who? That's Syria, the Seleucid, the Antiochus guys. Keep that in mind. So this is Antiochus III. The great multitude is speaking about this was a huge, huge war. And I know I've told you a couple times about this before. This one's huge because the Egyptian forces consisted of 70,000 infantry, 5,000 cavalry, and 73 war elephants. Okay? Well, the Syrian forces had 62,000 infantry, 6,000 cavalry, and 102 war elephants. That is huge. That is huge. And that's what it's talking about, these great multitudes, okay? In the end, Egypt wins. Or the Ptolemaic Empire. They win, okay? That's what verse 12 is talking about. He gets really prideful and exalted, and this whole notion here. But what's even more important is what's going to happen next with these two guys, okay? The Egyptian ruler, Ptolemaic IV, he doesn't pursue Antiochus. He goes back to Egypt to party, okay? Well, the internal homeland of the Egyptian natives do not like him. Some of them see him as weak, okay? And the little brothers from the south, known as the Cushites, or the Nubians, come in and take territory from them. Now keep in mind, what did I give you an example one time? If Egypt is Alabama, the Nubianites are who? Auburn, the little brother. And there's nothing worse than losing territory to your little brother. I mean, Alabama can win the national championship and lose to Auburn in the Iron Bowl, and it still hurts, doesn't it? Well, that's how the Egyptians felt here. We can run the whole world, but if we lose territory to the Nubianites, something's wrong. We just don't like it. And that's what happened. So this is going to lead to a lot of internal conflict because he just doesn't care. He's like, you can have that territory. I don't really want it anyway. So the Egyptian natives, they don't like him at this point. He's having a lot of internal political instability going on. Well, for the next 15 years, the defeated Antiochus III licks his wounds, and he goes back and he begins to regain territory to the east. What's he doing while he's regaining this territory? Rebuilding his army, making treaties, making alliances. What do you think he's planning on doing? Re-attacking Egypt. Okay? You didn't squash him. That was stupid because he's going to rebuild an empire and come on back and take things over. And that's what we're going to see happen in these next few verses. What inevitably happens in about 204, 203 BC, the king who likes to party, Ptolemy IV, dies. He's got a son who's too young to really rule, and he's got these general co-regents ruling. So what does Antiochus see but political instability going on, the perfect time to attack? So what does he do? He rallies the troops, and we're going to see verse 13 through 16, the rise of the Seleucid Empire. Daniel's predicting all this. And what's going to happen with this is basically it's going to show how Antiochus III becomes the greatest Greek king since Alexander the Great, and inevitably he's going to take back over Palestine in verse 16. This will be huge because it will open the door for his son to come in and persecute the Jews. God's predicting all this. Okay, you're watching it unfold here. All right, verse 13 and 14. We'll see what happens here.
For the king of the north shall again raise a multitude greater than the first, and after some years he shall come on with a great army and abundant supplies. In those times many shall rise against the king of the south, and the violent among your own people shall lift themselves up in order to fulfill the vision, but they shall fail. Okay, king of the north, Syria, Antiochus III, you were still talking about here. King of the south is a new child king called Ptolemy IV, who's got a general named Scopas, who's going to run his army. The minis will rise against the king of the south.
That is talking about Antiochus III aligning himself with Philip V of Macedon. Remember the Egyptian natives who didn't like him because of the Nubian state territory? They're going to join his forces. Even pro-Syrian Jews are going to join his forces. So the many are going to come together and they're going to defeat the Ptolemaic empires themselves. They're going to defeat the Egyptians at this point. The Seleucids are going to take over the Middle East. This is what God's predicting here. And this is what happens. The violent ones among your people are talking about the Jews who aided Antiochus in these wars. Why do they be called violent ones? Because they aid him in these wars, but in the end, by aiding him, who's going to be able to come to power? His son. So although they love this guy, they think, yeah, you freed us from the Egyptians. The grass is greener on the other side. It doesn't turn out that way. Because they've just let in a precursor of the Antichrist, basically. Okay? Keep that in mind. So the violent ones among you are the Jews who help him. How the violent ones fall, as this is talking about, is although the Egyptians get defeated, they take time to send their general over to Jerusalem and punish those who basically helped Antiochus. They punish them in this process. All right? All right, now verse 15 itself. Read this.
Then the king of the north shall come and throw up sage works, and take a well-fortified city. And after the forces of the south shall not stand, or even his best troops, for there shall be no strength to stand.
This is talking about king of the north is going to come in and beat Egypt again. Antiochus III and his forces. The well-fortified city is going to be Sidon, a Phoenician coast that's going to be huge, taking over Palestine. Okay, the major battle here is called the Battle of Panium. The Battle of Panium was the ancient location of Caesarea Philippi. What happened in Caesarea Philippi? Come on now, I've only preached this to you forever. What happened in Caesarea Philippi? Peter said, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. The Peterine confession happens much later there, okay? Keep that in mind. So that's what's going on there. Anyway, we see verse 16. He's about to take over. Read verse 16 for us.
But he who comes against him shall do as he wills, and none shall stand before him. And he shall stand in the glorious land with destruction in his hand.
And he shall do as he wills. None shall stand before him. Very similar description to a Greek king early on. Very similar to the description to Alexander. So now we've had Alexander the Great, and we're going to have Antiochus the Great. And he's going to rule the whole Mediterranean world. Even to the point he has control of the glorious land. What do you think the glorious land is? Palestine. Jerusalem. He runs it all. He is the king of the East. And you might as well be at this point, if you're the king of the East, the king of the world. And this is what he is at this point in time. So he's in control of everything. Just keep that in mind. And guess what? The Jews are ecstatic that he's in control. They are loving him. They're all about him. They're like, you are the man. You have rescued us. But in the end, did he really rescue them? No. They traded off one captivity nation for one who would do much, much worse. And we'll see that here in a second. Anyway, verse 17, before we're not going to get all the way through tonight, but verse 17, we're going to come to another political marriage. Okay? What Antiochus is going to do, he's going to marry his daughter to the ruler of Egypt. And that's what we're going to see here. Okay? What this is going to talk about is, he's going to want her to basically spy on Egypt. So he can come in and he can take over Egypt. All right? The problem is, when he does this marriage, she is 10 years old. Remember I mentioned this Wednesday night. If you marry off a 10-year-old girl to a 16-year-old boy, her mentality is not going to be to take up for daddy if she lives in a foreign land. What's it going to be? To survive. And inevitably, what does she do? She falls in love. And inevitably, what does she do? She just ignores her father and goes full force with the enemy her father sent her into. God is going to predict all that right here. Okay, read verse 17.
He shall set his face to come with the strength of his whole kingdom, and he shall bring terms of agreement and perform them. He shall give him the daughter of women to destroy the kingdom, but shall not stand or be to his advantage. Okay, just know this. I won't get into all detail on that, but his daughter's name is Cleopatra. Okay, Cleopatra the first. There's going to be many Cleopatras later. Will not stand or be to his advantage. He thinks he's going to send her in to spy and allow her to take over Egypt. But what does this say will happen? It will not work to his advantage. Why doesn't it work to his advantage? Because she falls in love with the guy she's married to. And inevitably, she actually takes over power in Egypt itself. Okay? God predicts all of this. Keep that in mind. We will get into details some other time. Now, verse 18. In a robo-beast. Verse 18. In a robo-beast. Remember, God's already predicted there will be a great mighty empire come in after Greece. Remember that, okay?
Who is that great mighty empire? Rome. Here's the first time we see Rome. Is Rome at this point in time a mighty, mighty empire yet? No, they're startup empire. Is Antiochus himself a mighty, mighty empire right now? Yeah. He's dominating the world. It should be a lopsided victory. If God knows what he's talking about, then he will let you know the underdog will win here. Does God know what he's talking about? Yeah, he lets you know the underdog's going to win here. All right, verse 18, read that for us.
Afterward he shall turn his face to the coastlands, and shall capture many of them. But a commander shall put an end to his insolence. Indeed, he shall turn his insolence back upon him.
What this talks about is Antiochus III goes to the coastlands. He wants some of Asia Minor. He wants some of the Greek islands. And what happens is Rome and Commander Scipio, they send a warning. They say, Antiochus, don't come any further. You turn around right now. We'll let you live. Don't come any further. Stop it right here. Well, what does Antiochus say? Exactly. That's exactly what he says. What are you talking about here? I'm the king of the East. I got a military of 70,000. You got this puny little military. I don't know who you are. I'm the mighty, mighty Mediterranean king. Ain't no one gonna stop me, and ain't no little no-name empire gonna tell me what to do. So he goes marching on in. What do you think that turns out for him? Not very good. Not very good at all. Because what inevitably happens is Scipio is one of the greatest general minds of the entire world history, okay? So they beat them. And he not only beats them once, he beats them twice, okay? So he loses 2 wars, and he's forced to make this treaty that inevitably bankrupts him, all right? He inevitably, in this treaty, has to give up all his territory in Europe and Asia Minor, has to pay billions of dollars, and has to give up his elephant corps and his naval fleets, all right? He gets bankrupted. And on top of that, his son gets taken captive, Antiochus IV, and they say, if you even think about marching in this territory again, the second we hear you're coming, your son, done. So he ain't got a choice. He can't reattack again. Okay? So he gets bankrupt, loses territory, loses his military, and he can't get a forcep to go back or lose his son. He is just lost. He has nowhere to turn at this point in time. The king of the world has been upset by an upstart no-name empire. Now we know who Rome will become, but they didn't. But who did know who Rome would become? God. This is why he could so easily predict this. All right? Verse 19. Things aren't looking good for Antiochus III. Read verse 19 for us.
Then he shall turn his face back toward the fortresses of his own land, and he shall stumble and fall, and shall not be found.
Well, he's got to raise money to pay back Rome. And one account has 15,000 talents. Now, we just went over what a talent was. And that could be exaggeration, but we went over this morning in Jesus' statement about a talent, and that's just the highest monetary thing you can get. You know, that's billions upon billions upon billions upon billions of dollars. You know, how are you going to pay that back? Well, you're going to start robbing the treasuries for real people. Okay? So he starts turning around back in his own territory and starts robbing the temples of his own territory. Well, that's one thing you just don't do. You don't rob people's temples because they don't like that too much. So inevitably, when he's robbing a temple of the Syrian version of Zeus, the people rise up and they kill him. And there's the end of Antiochus III. The mighty king of the Mediterranean world dies. And he comes to an end. And kind of this melodramatic, not much to it, stumbles and falls, not be found, because there's nothing left to you. Because you didn't read Daniel, who said Robo-Beast is coming, and were stupid enough to go against Robo-Beast, and you lost. Okay? Now, verse 20, we will stop there, go to here. We got his first son. Before we get to Antiochus IV, his first son is going to come to power. Okay? Read verse 20.
Then shall arise in his place one who shall send an exactor of tribute for the glory of the kingdom. But within a few days he shall be broken, neither in anger nor in battle.
Well, there's really, the next son is Seleucus IV. And he's really only known for 2 things. All right? Not ruling very long, but besides that, he's only known for having to raise money to pay off the Romans in that treaty. Okay? So he sends tax collectors everywhere, and he's known for being assassinated. All right? What are these 2 things right here, this one verse about him say? An exactor of tribute, known for having to send people to get taxes, and he shall be broken neither in anger nor in battle. That means it's not a spur of the moment and it's not a war, it's a planned poisoning where he's assassinated. So how well did God predict this guy's life? I mean, there's 2 things known about him in history that he's known for, and God puts it in one summary sentence right here, better than any of us could write if we're looking back on it. All right? So that's what happens to him. The only cool thing about this guy is that he sends out tax collectors and his prime minister, and when his prime minister gets to Jerusalem to ransack the temple, 2 Maccabees said angelic figures beating his tax collector senseless. Just beat him to a pulp with a mighty, mighty angelic destroyer. We don't know if that's true or not, but that's always cool when you hear about angels beating guys up and trying to rob the temple. And that's why we know about that guy right there. Inevitably, his prime minister, tax collector, is the one who poisons and assassinates and kills him, but he won't get much power because who's going to come up in verse 21 and rise to power? The Antichrist figure, Antiochus the Fourth. And that's where we are. Now we'll pick back up Wednesday. What that's going to be is Antiochus the Fourth is going to have his career summarized in verses 21 through 35. Then you need to pay attention. Verse 36 through 39 is going to describe the character of the Antichrist. It could be a double fulfillment. Things could describe Antiochus the Fourth, and things could describe the Antichrist, double fulfillment. Once you get to verse 40 through 45, that cannot be anybody except the Antichrist. There's no way around it. Now, it's probably speaking in apocalyptic language, and it's going to be very difficult to be exact about. But we will read it, we will see what can come from it. We'll let you watch how this unfolds. How Antiochus just flips over to the Antichrist in one smooth sentence. And it's through double fulfillment or prophetic telescoping, one or the other. All right? All right, you did good. Any questions? Follow on.
How did he get away from the Romans?
They let him go during the treaty. They signed a treaty with him and lost everything. Rome would let you live if you gave them everything. They had this mentality of, you give us all you got, we'll let you have your life. You know what I'm saying? Give me your bank account and you can live. And that's what it was. Because if they had killed them, who was going to give them the money they needed? You know what I'm saying? They owed them a lot of money. And that's what Antiochus III the Great inevitably had to go do, was to go try to raise a bunch of money. He just became their puppet at that point. Just basically trying to raise a bunch of money for them. And inevitably that's what killed him, was getting money paid back to the Romans. Now what we're going to see is when Antiochus IV comes on the stage, the Romans aren't going to be messing with him right now because they're fighting wars up in this area while he's going down here. And Antiochus IV is actually going to win his first campaign into Egypt. And it's not going to be until his second campaign into Egypt that the Romans even pay attention to him, because they're worried he's going to take over the world. Because if he gets so powerful that he controls the entire Middle East, even on down into Egypt, he might just be too powerful for Rome. So it's at that point they step in. And they come in and they come to the aid of the Egyptians. And it's funny, it predicts this. They come into them and they get this stick and they draw a circle on Antiochus IV. And they say, before you step out of the circle, you give us your decision. Is it war or retreat? We'll let you have your life. But if you step out this without giving us the decision, you're going to die. And if you want to go to war, we'll kill you anyway. So they didn't really give a choice. But it's that saying, step over the line, that's where the saying probably comes from. They get a stick and draw it around him and say, make that decision right now. So we're going to see the Romans are going to be robo-beasts, will be the brick wall that comes against both Antiochus III and Antiochus IV. Okay? And inevitably what's going to happen to Antiochus IV, he will kind of begin to lose areas after the Maccabean revolt. And we're going to see the rise of a new Jewish, basically, powerhouse. Once the Maccabees take over, there's an era in Jewish history that's very little known, that they actually regain as much territory as they had during the David and Solomon era. They don't keep it for a little while. But once the Maccabean revolt sets off, you get down to Simon one, you get down to him, and his son John is going to take over. And the Jews will get pretty powerful during that time. But what's going to happen is instability is going to allow the Romans to come back in. And in 63 BC, the Romans will take over Jerusalem. By that point, they run everybody. And they're going to go through a few turmoil situations, and they're inevitably going to install a client king, Herod the Great, who will give them stability in that area. And we all know who he is. So we're going to watch all this unfold, what inevitably happens. So this is God predicting the intertestamental period between the Old and New Testaments. And we're watching it unfold. And it's such an important time. And so few people study Daniel 11. And when they don't, I know it's hard. You heard me teach this tonight. You've got to have a history to be able to do this as well. You can't just, you got to literally study about 176 hours within a week and have a history to be able to do all this. And it's hard, but there's so much depth to see how much in control God really is, that it makes all these other prophecies so reassured to know that he knows what he's talking about. This isn't some wild imagery guesses that just are, we have no idea. I mean, if you watch this unfold, yeah, these were symbols that when you saw after the fact were clearly what they were talking about. Which is going to be the same thing when you read Revelation, how it's going to unfold, things like that, and the rest of Daniel. When you actually see how it happens, you're going to look back and go, oh wow, that fits perfectly. And it's going to let you see how much in control God really is. And how much that this is why we serve him, because no one can beat him. And when he promises a heavenly home, we're going to get a heavenly home. Nothing can come against him. And this is reassuring our faith and our trust and why we owe him everything. Because he gave us life physically, and he promised us eternal spiritual life. And when he promises something, he never goes back on it. I mean, if you can predict history this much, you know what you're talking about. And that's what we're seeing unfold before us. And so few people study Daniel 11 because it's so hard. But there's such meat there that just reassures how great God is. So just keep all that in mind there. That's a good. Any other questions? Good question on him, by the way. Yeah. Robo Beast is coming to the scene. He's huge here. We'll look at him more later. All right. Anything else?
Well, one other thing.
Okay.
Let's say when the territory of the South sent the daughter up to the north, why didn't they just have two wives like everybody else back then?
When you're doing a political marriage, you've got the main wife who's got power, and that's what you're concerned about. You could have another wife or even a concubine, it depends on which the treaty is,
Yeah.
but she's got to be your main wife. And the reason why is the heir with her has got to be when it comes to power. That's part of the deal. You can't have two wives where the same heir has the right to have power. That's the big issue. Because if we've got the heir to power, then we've got the primary queen anyway. And that's what you're worried about. Because what happens is a lot of these women, when their husband died and their son was the heir, what did that mean for them? And their son was the child, they had the power. And that's what you want to be. You want to be that primary wife. It isn't that they couldn't have polygamy or more than one wife. Sometimes you couldn't, sometimes you couldn't. The point was you wanted to be that main heir-producing queen, and that's who you had to be in these political marriages. Because that way your nations wouldn't fight each other, because that king coming to power would have a bloodline coming from both opposing nations, and that was your point on that. So yeah, you could have it, but you couldn't have that rightful heir person have it at the same time. So does that answer your question? Okay. Anything else? You got it all? Good job. Very good. Okay. You got it, Gene? Yeah. Yes, sir. Good job. We'll pick up on that, and I don't know how I'm going to do. That's why I'm really glad I kind of cut back, because I'm afraid if I'd have given you all new information today, it would have been way too much for, yes. And that's what I felt. I felt like you did such a good job on the second Daniel 10 and on the second Daniel 11 that if we did this a third time as hard as it was, you'd get it, and you did a really good job. So that's good. And for a lot of you, it was your first time. So you see why it was so hard for you to go.